to give you some examples, now that we've kind of talked about how there are different ways to think about technology integration, I want to focus on the mobile learning aspect a little bit. And once again, this will ever be evolving the more and more that as you reach into your own classrooms. I'm also, to start off here, I want to talk about formative assessment a little bit. And it's really large in a lot of places. If nothing else, formative assessment, it's a way to help us think about, how are students doing, checking in, right? Like asking you to raise your hand so I know if I need to explain what Google Hangouts on Air are, or taking a Google form, or designing deeper reflective learning experiences. Another big thing that we're going to, I want to talk about is how formative assessment isn't just necessarily take one format. So most common, we want to think about the desired state of learning, often modeled by the teacher, right? So the desired state. The teacher often models, this is mastery, this is what we need to be able to do. I would also say in order to capture the current state, technology is most traditionally used, I should go back, sorry, I went build crazy here. Is technology most commonly, I think people see it as a way to quickly gather where people are at, right? Whether it's something on the Today's Meet, whether it's a Google form, whether it's infused learning or clickers that we used to have, stuff like that. And that's fine, that's good information. But a lot of times, I think when we think about formative assessment and using technology to identify the current state, we often tend to just quickly gravitate towards tools that identify deficiencies. Like, you got this one right and wrong, you got that one right and wrong, this group of people did really well here, but we need more work here, which is good. You need that information as a teacher to inform your instruction. But more importantly, how do we go beyond that? Looking at how do we help students go from their current state of learning to the desired state of learning? And for us, that is focusing on student thinking. And I'm going to talk through some examples here about how technology can really help us to engage learners in the process of learning, right? Because learning is a process, as you probably have all figured out by now, and being in school as long as you can, as well as life. And for us, looking at getting from the current state to the desired state, this is a key piece. And technology has helped us to redefine how students are able to share their thinking. And specifically help teachers as well as students look at growth over time and be able to articulate gaps in their own learning and reflect on growth. Okay? Because as you know, I think someone here said, if you can explain something, right, you probably know it really, really well. And if you're comfortable doing that, and that's huge. Helping students to think through things as a process is what we're going to focus on. One thing I noticed in some of the Google form responses that you submitted earlier is that a lot of people said, does technology take away from learning as a process? Is it just quick, compute that answer, be done? And I would argue the best way you need to think about technology is to think about how does it help us as well as learners themselves to look at growth over time. So one of the big things that I'm going to show you some examples around, and actually now that I have a little more time, I may actually have you look at some learning examples. Good thing I'm over-prepared. I'm always over-prepared. Randy could tell you. It's probably a lifelong trait. I would say without technology, you have learners being able to demonstrate some learning, explain what they've learned, reflect on what they've learned, and for us, supporting metacognitive activity, so thinking about their own thinking, right? And I often, when I lead these workshops for teachers and helping them to design or awaken metacognition in their students with designing learning experiences that are technology rich, I often say, you're probably already doing these things, correct? And they say, yeah, and we talk about examples, because these are key things that good teaching will ask learners to do. And really, formative assessment, remember, going back to that, I want you to think about it that designing reflective learning experiences is a part of this formative assessment piece. It's this part of helping to understand where learners are in their current state, as well as helping those learners to understand where they are in their current state, right? And I mean, just think about the power of being able to think through, what you know, where you need to be, and what else you need. I would like to push you to think about how apps or tools or technologies that at first glance may not seem relevant to what you teach. And being at a high-performing high school, people tend to be very content-driven, but how do we think at the bigger picture of learning, right? Because the reality is we have diverse learners everywhere, no matter what district you're in, what school you're in. One of the examples I want to show you actually highlights the app Puppet Pals. Has anyone here ever heard of that app? At first, when you look at it or look it up, you're going to be like, that's kind of a goofy app. Yes, it can also be used by friends such as my friend Jane Schlee, who is now a library media teacher, where kids are creating stories and then showing them. But Puppet Pals actually is an app that allows users to embed their own pictures. And when I was teaching AP Psychology, one of the things that's challenging for students is explaining and understanding how a neuron fires. That's pretty abstract, correct? Maybe. Okay. Not if you can hear me. Anyone out there? I love being around people who still get my jokes. Okay, so just to kind of give you an idea of how even an app like Puppet Pals can be used, and I'm not going to make you watch this whole thing, but I had my students then being able to articulate and show and describe how a neuron fires. And it would really help them as they're just trying to understand the content, also as they're getting ready for AP tests. Not only are they being able to explain and then revisit their explanations, but this is an example of how we're using an app such as Puppet Pals in a behavioral and science classroom. Just to give you an idea of how the app functions.
Today we're going to learn about neurons. Neurons are nerve cells that are the basic building blocks of the nervous system. We're going to talk about how a neuron fires and what the purpose of a neuron firing is. Extensions of the neuron where the message is received, or you could think delivered. D for dendrite, D for delivered. Here you have the cell body with the nucleus. You have the axon, all right here, where the brief electrical charge travels. And then you have the axon terminals, where neurotransmitters are stored.
This is the basketball one, okay? And as you watch this, I want you to kind of think about, okay, what is the student being able to demonstrate, reflect on, the big picture, but also what are some features of the app that allow, the technology, that allow him to do things that would be different than, okay, I did the basketball drills, goodbye, I'm going home. And remember, freshman PE, it's 40 freshman boys in one class next to another class of 40 freshman boys in the same room. Keep that in mind.
Hi, I'm Mike Konorowski, and this is my basketball drill presentation. When dribbling, one should remember to keep their eyes up, knees bent, and ball low and close. I need to keep my eyes up and bend my knees more, as shown in this diagram. When passing, one should remember to take only one step after catching the ball. Pass straight across on the chest pass, and bounce the ball in the middle on a bounce pass. I should remember to bounce the ball more towards the middle. Can basketball be a good exercise for lifelong fitness? In the idea of cardio, basketball involves running, but one would have to run back and forth across the court to get the benefit of the cardio.
Explain a little bit for us this concept of content curation, and which you guys actually kind of started talking about. And for us, technology, whether it's iPads, whether it's our learning management system, whether it's Google, it's helping us to redefine the learner role. And I'm going to, she is a first-year teacher, okay, who I've worked very close with this year. She teaches fine arts, specifically Acting 1 and Acting 2, and I want you to listen to what she has to say, and then I'll show you a short clip of one of her students about how the technology has helped to redefine the role the learner is in.
The project that I'm working with right now is in my Acting 2 class, the Fairy Tale Tableau project, where I have broken the class up into groups of 4 or 5. They've chosen a fairy tale that they'd like to work with, and they've broken that fairy tale up into 5 specific moments that they're creating tableaus for. And tableau in French means a living picture. So they've chosen 5 moments of a fairy tale to portray the action of that fairy tale in the form of a tableau. So things that were gained by the addition of technology from a student perspective was definitely time to reflect, which is a huge part of the learning process, being able to actually look at the piece. So instead of having the moment of kids just up on stage and you're sort of stuck in that performance moment, to be able to actually capture that moment, to take more time to study the intended targets. So are they using their space? Are they incorporating shape, facing, and level, my specific learning targets for the content or for the unit? We're able to sort of capture those and make sure, zone in, and look at that frozen moment in time and truly assess, are they reaching our target in that technology? And the kids are excited to really get their hands in and get involved in the process of this project. They like to go in and they like to take the pictures and import them. And in this project, they're actually putting in word bubbles in the comics. So they get to use their creative thought and bring in their own ideas about what's happening in the moment.
So the big thing here is taking something that they do live, capturing it, and then having other students analyze what another group is doing and then posting and reflecting on that.